that's a sign that that's just, okay, trying to not go really off on my opinions here, but that's not a good sign, my friends. Hey dancers, it's Kirsten. Welcome back to the Confident Dancer YouTube channel. Today, I would love to tell you the story of how I got my first professional ballet contract. I share this story first to kind of feed some curiosities. I don't know about you, but when I was young, I was like, how do people actually get a contract? Like, what does that process look like? And also just as second companies and trainee contracts, apprentice contracts have become extremely prevalent in the professional ballet world, that process has gotten more elongated and ambiguous. So I thought I would share with you how I got my first contract. And then also I'm sharing this because there are a few surprising morals to the story that I am so grateful I learned from upon reflection. So I'd love to share those learnings with you in the hopes that this is both entertaining and educational as per usual. So enjoy. And also, if you're new to this channel and you don't know me, I used to be a professional ballet dancer full-time. Now I still dance, but my primary job is working as a mindset coach for dancers, which basically means that I specialize in helping pre-professional and professional dancers overcome the mental struggles that hold us back from performing and feeling our best, like self-doubt, performance anxiety. I specialize in helping dancers build confidence that helps them to perform better consistently, things like that. So that's a little about me and where I'm coming from, and it's probably going to inform how I think about this story. Let's zoom back in time to 2016. I had just graduated college. I was a ballet major at the University of Utah. I really enjoyed my time there. I personally graduated a year early, and I would highly recommend that if you are wanting to do a fine arts degree and then go into a professional company. I would personally recommend it because it was it was more cost efficient than staying for 4 years. And I personally had already had pre-professional training away from home at the Houston Ballet Academy before that. So I felt like 3 years was a good amount of time for me. And then it was time to fly the nest. So that meant company audition season, my senior year. Something I would really recommend doing is don't make the audition season that you really want to get a contract or need to get a contract. Don't make that your first audition season. I know that company auditions are costly. You have to travel to them. There's a fee to audition, which a lot of people, including myself, I think that's pretty silly, even though I understand there's overhead, but that's another discussion. I won't get into that. But anyway, so I understand they're costly and they take time and also a lot of care in preparing yourself for these auditions. However, I highly recommend throwing yourself into it at least once before you actually want to get a contract, because just like anything, it's a learned skill and you want to get used to the process. You want to get comfortable with it, more comfortable, not that it's a comfortable process, and you want to acclimate yourself so that you know what to expect when you're really trying to bring your A game and get your desired result. So I'm really glad I did that. So I was going into audition season knowing what I was getting into, and I had some classmates who did over 20 auditions. For some reason at the time, I don't know why, I had planned to do 6, which is not a lot for being like, I'm desperate for a contract, but that's what I did. And I really had done my research on these companies. Also, that being said, for being a dancer who is a little over 5'8", sadly, a lot of companies have a height restriction of 5'7" and under for women. So in a way, I could look at that as really sad. I chose to see it as, hey, they're saving me time. So, and I don't have to fly across the country to audition for your company because you wouldn't take me anyway. My prospects were a little narrower, but I really did my research and I talked to my professors. I really recommend having a mentor figure who is as tuned into the industry as possible, who works with other professional, pre-professional dancers, and who kind of has a pulse on what's going on in different companies, because they can tend to say, hey, I would go for that company, maybe not that one. You would like it here, not there. If that's possible for you, I would highly recommend it, because I definitely was super grateful that I had some professors looking out for me. I had one professor he did a residency to choreograph on a second company that he knew I had auditioned for. And this is very prevalent now, and I think it's so like, oh, but it is what it is. Okay, so a lot of times you go to these company auditions, the cattle call, open call, bunches of dancers show up, and if they like you, Very rarely these days do they just hand out a contract. Sadly, but I keep saying sadly, it's gonna be the last time I use that word. This whole process, it's just a lot. So you go, and then if they like you, a lot of times what they'll do is they will invite you to their summer program to then basically audition for several weeks to then see if they would offer you a contract. It's a lot. If the company is considerate, they will also offer you a hefty scholarship to their summer program. A lot of times they don't. I would say it's a pretty good gauge of their interest to see if they give you a scholarship or not. At least one of the summer programs I was auditioning for, I got a good scholarship. So I thought, okay, I talked to my mentors and I thought, all right, I went to the company audition, they invited me, gave me a scholarship to go to the summer program, and I recommend seeing if in their email they say, we would like to consider you for an apprentice contract. Be cautious, because sometimes if they just willy-nilly invite you, then it's like they're probably not being very intentional with you. They're probably, sadly, not that interested if they're not putting in the email like, we are considering you for this role in the company. Also, if they say trainee and you know that that's not what you're looking for second company, apprentice, and quarter ballet contracts, which again, it's, unless you're working with a really, really small company, or you are going to one of the world's top schools, or you won some competitions and you really have a hefty resume, it is very rare that you get a full-on paid quarter ballet contract with a notable company just straight out of school. Very rare. So a lot of times these days you gotta start like trainee, second company, apprentice. So anyway, I knew that's kind of what I was going into, but I wanted to do some research into companies that looked like they actually had a pipeline. If you look at the dancers' bios on the company website, it looked like, oh, that a notable amount of dancers in the company actually have come from the second company. Good, that's a sign that they actually do hire from the second company. Instead of, if you see a huge second company and then you actually look at the company bios on the website, most of the dancers don't come from the school or second company, that's a sign that that's just, okay, trying to not go really off on my opinions here, but that's not a good sign, my friends. That means they're just keeping a bunch of dancers there for free to get their labor, and they're not actually interested in giving you some upward mobility from there. So red flag, don't go there. After my 6 auditions, I got invited to 2 summer programs, and then I actually did just flat out get a trainee contract with Louisville Ballet, which I looked into it. It's not paid, but the trainees are involved in a lot of the company's productions, and they do get a shoe budget. So they get some shoes provided for, which should it be more? Yes, but is that like pretty standard / okay, considered okay in the ballet world? Yeah. So I decided to actually take my chances and look at going for an apprentice contract with Oklahoma City Ballet or a second company contract with Atlanta Ballet. I could look into going to both the Atlanta Ballet and the Oklahoma City Ballet programs in the same summer so that I can widen my chances of getting into a company by going for 2. I decided to turn down the trainee contract with Louisville Ballet, even though it was like a guaranteed offer. For some reason, I just had a feeling like, okay, I could get something a little better here. I asked, would you be open to letting me go to these summer programs and then let you know at the end of the summer? I understand if not. And they said, no, we'd actually like to know by April, so it's okay if you'd like to pursue those instead. So we kind of just left it there. That's great advice too. It's always okay to email, ask for feedback, ask for the information that you need, ask for it very simply, keep it short, keep it to the point. This is business on both sides, so you're allowed to act like it's your business too, because it is your business. So yeah, I went to the Oklahoma City Ballet summer program first. So here's where the story really gets juicy. So I go and I'm like, okay, the first week I'm there, the director isn't there. I'm like, what? But I thought, okay, just gonna get comfortable, work on my confidence here, really work on getting comfortable in the classroom so I can present myself really well. And then they said, okay, the director is gonna come in and teach the highest level for these 3 days during the summer program to specifically look at you guys for apprentice contracts, whoever's been given that potential offer. And I'm looking around the room, y'all, and there are like flipping like 50 dancers in my class. I don't know if I'm remembering that right, but there were a lot of people and they were really talented. So I was just kind of like, what? So I was like, okay, try to not let that get to you. I'm really proud of myself because I kept focusing on like, okay, Kirsten, what do you have to offer? What do you have to offer? What are you good at? Like I tried to keep that at the front of my mind every single day. And I knew that for me, some of my standout qualities are professionalism. I do have a really good attitude. I'm really great to work with. And I'm really good at picking up choreography very fast and being very attentive. And then also qualitatively, I think my artistic presence and artistic quality is something that stands out for me personally. Now again, notice how I'm using my language there. I'm not saying compared to everyone else. I'm saying those are personally my standout qualities amongst the rest. And I knew that also having like an energetic, proud, and also like graceful presence is something that I'm good at. So I thought, okay, if that's my persona as an artist, I'm really going to put that forward. And it helped me to not get so distracted by like, oh my gosh, she has super long legs. Oh my gosh, she was like a YGP star. Oh my gosh, she can do like an oversplit every time she does a Sona Shah. Like, does that get in my head a little bit? Yes. Like, welcome to being a human. But I got pretty good at like focusing back on what mattered. So we're doing the 3 days of classes with the director. And day one, I'm like, okay, good attitude. All right, let's just try our best. I feel like I did okay, but I felt like he wasn't really watching me. And so I was like, okay, gotta really prove myself tomorrow, put myself out there. Second day goes by and I feel like, again, I'm doing okay, but this is how I was experiencing it. I don't know if this is what actually happened, but while I was trying to focus on dancing and like being impressive, what I was picking up on is, oh my gosh, I was standing on a bar with 4 incredible other dancers and I literally felt like the director would come by and look at the girl in front of me, look at her name tag, like super obvious, look at his little note, write something down on his notepad, and then he would go to the next girl, look at their name tag, write something down, and then go to the next girl. And then there was me, and then he just walks away. I'm like, excuse me, like, I was crestfallen, you guys. I was like, that is when my good attitude like cracked and I was like, it's over. He's not interested. I sound like I'm talking about dating. Sometimes, honestly, trying to go for a job in the ballet world feels like putting yourself out on a dating show. It's brutal. So I'm like, crestfallen. I instantly interpret that as, oh my gosh, he does not like me, he's not interested, I'm invisible to this director, but I'm like, okay, no, Kirsten, okay, focus, okay? I'm getting so worked up and like this is probably relatable to a lot of you. You're like, you have a good attitude most of the time, then something happens and then you start to go in a spiral. Comment if you know what I'm talking about. But then you like try to work yourself out of the spiral while also trying to dance and there's just a lot going on. But I was able to be like, whew, just enough to start really focusing. And when we came into the center, I distinctly remember the first combination in the center was a tendu combination, and it was intentionally a brain teaser. Like it was a very complex arm and leg and musicality combination that was obviously intended to show off anyone who could, you know, really rise to the occasion and learn quickly and pay attention to detail there. So I was like, okay, Kirsten, this is where you shine. This is your chance. And I remember kind of like trying to shuffle my way to the front. Like, guys, I was desperate. I was straight desperate. And so I'm like, okay, let's just try to at least just show our best in this combination. And I remember he showed it like really quickly, maybe 2 times. And then he was like, who wants to show it? And I'm like, I just shoot my hand up. Again, desperation energy. I would not recommend desperation energy, but you know, thank God I did not mess up. I did it. And he was like, good attention to detail. And I was like, so I have my moment of victory. Yay, woo, feeling okay for a second. However, the class continues, and then for the rest of center, I just go back to feeling totally invisible. You know when you're desperate, you're like really in that mindset of like desperation, I need you to like me. And I don't recommend this, I'm just calling out what I was experiencing. It is so easy to fixate on like tracking where the director is in the room, looking at them and being like, are you looking at me? Are you taking note of me? Do you look like you're ignoring me? Do you like me? Are you going to give me a correction? Are you going to give me a compliment? Like you're just so attached to like, what do you think? And it gets you out of yourself, right? It gets you so hung up on what they're doing, which you're also not in control of, that it puts you out of being able to be in your own power and in your own ability to influence the situation through focusing on your own dancing. I was spiraling in that direction. And then I go back to like, okay, I'm invisible. That was worth nothing. He doesn't like me. Ballet class finishes, and then he starts teaching a contemporary class. And at that point, I was like, this is it. I think this was the last day out of 3 that he was teaching, and I was like, I didn't get the contract. Now I really have to focus on getting a contract in Atlanta. I'm desperate. Oh no, like starting to get into the scarcity mindset, desperation, all that stuff. The director finishes the class and he's like, so I know several of you are leaving early to go to other summer intensives, and this will be the last class that I'm teaching while a lot of you are here for the first session in order to audition. So what you can do is I'll be in my office right after this, and if you would like to know right now whether you got an apprentice contract or not, just come into my office after this class and talk to me. And I'm like, fantastic. Like on one hand, I'm like, that's terrifying. And on the other hand, I'm like, great, sweet relief. Let's just get some answers. And I'm sick of beating around the bush. I'm like the 3rd person in line. I don't even remember what the other dancers were like when they were coming out. I was just like, he asked me a couple questions about myself. And I think, again, this was not my best moment, you guys. Again, I was in big desperation, sad girl energy. And I think I was like, yeah, I just graduated college, looking for a contract. And this is so embarrassing to admit on the internet, but I think I literally said, so I'm kind of desperate. Like, I would not recommend that. That's such loser energy. Like, why did I do that? And he goes, oh, well, no problem. I already told Penny to put you on the list to send out a contract to you for an apprenticeship. And I was like, I was flabbergasted, you guys. Flabbergasted. Because clearly I got in such a spiral of like obsession about like trying to read all of the signs, trying to read his mind. I had gotten just so wound up that it led me to interpret everything as, oh, I don't think you're looking at me as much as you should to mean that you're liking my dancing. And so see how I spun this whole story that actually wasn't real? And I'm glad I didn't totally undermine the thing by, you know, totally spiraling and then not being able to dance well. But that was such, okay, obviously a joyful moment when I found out, and getting to call my family afterwards was like, we were all crying because, you know, this was just my dream. And I know it's small, and to some people it might be like, oh my gosh, amazing, you're an apprentice, it's such an accomplishment. And I know that there's some trolls out there in the ballet world. Honestly, I don't care what you think. If you're interested in commenting and being like, that's not a real professional opportunity, you're not a real, okay, literally bye. For me, it was a big deal. And I was extremely proud of that. And so to share that with my family was amazing. And I will never forget, I called my mom, and then I tried to get my dad on the phone to do like a 3-way call. But I think while I was trying to get my mom on the phone or something, I accidentally put my dad on mute for literally 45 minutes while I told my mom the whole story, and we're excited and crying. And I was so excited, I didn't even notice that my dad wasn't talking the whole time. And bless his heart, he was literally on hold for 45 minutes, and then I had to tell the whole story all over again. So it was really funny. But yeah, I just wanted to share that story to say, like, in hindsight, that really taught me to have a rule with myself of no mind reading. And I know that I'm human, everyone's human, like, we're gonna do it, we're gonna pick up on people's behaviors, and we're naturally going to try to interpret that. But just by noticing I'm doing it, and then saying, okay, I made a commitment to not mind read. I don't know what they think, and so I'm going to leave it up to them to verbalize what they think and what their decision is. And if they're not going to verbalize that with me, I'm going to choose to let that go and focus on what I'm trying to do here. It's a practice. You're not going to be like perfect at it right away. I'm not perfect at it yet. It is a practice I have to keep coming back to. It's a commitment I have to keep with myself, but it's such good advice, I think, to just say like, okay, you might think you know, you don't really know. So finishing up the story, I still ended up going to the Atlanta Ballet Summer Intensive and auditioning for the second company there, and there was some interest, but it did give me a good amount of comfort. I'm so grateful. I knew I had the other contract before I went into the 5-week summer program at Atlanta Ballet. So it was a long summer. It was like 7 weeks of summer intensives, and when you're 22 and you've just been through an emotional time of audition season, I was tired, man. I was like, honestly, kind of counting down the days. That was a pretty brutal summer, but exciting at the same time, and I have some sweet memories from it. So I didn't end up getting the contract with Atlanta Ballet. They were switching artistic directors, and so the interest I initially got from them ended up not being a good match for what the new artistic director was looking for, and that's kind of just what happens. I do want to say I did really appreciate how my contact at Atlanta Ballet, she was very communicative, and she also was honest with me that it would be at my own risk that I go to the summer program, because she said, honestly, with your height, it will really be a toss-up. I have a feeling the new director wants shorter. So I really appreciate that she told me that, because it also helped me to take ownership over my decision to take the risk and go. Of course, you could say it didn't pay off. I'm still glad I did it, because otherwise it would have been a big what if. So I'm glad I put myself out there. But anyway, that is how I got my first contract, and wow, it was an emotional roller coaster. I would love to hear from you if you are looking to audition for companies one day. If so, what is your dream company? And also, if you're in a company, I would love for you to just type a little brief version of your story of how you got your first contract in the comments. That would be quite fun. So I hope you really enjoyed this story time. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like this video if you enjoyed it. You know, YouTube stuff I'm supposed to tell you. It really does help me a lot when you send a like to this video, because it puts this video in front of more dancers' faces out there, and then they can look at my other content that will probably be even more helpful to them than a story time video. So anyway, thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next week. Bye!